Yeah, listeners, we're back, and of course, as soon as we come back, we get hit with it. I'm not in a good mood right now. I haven't felt this horrendous since March. Okay, and if you know what happened in March, the less said, the better, because my heart's still grieving from that. But now I'm grieving for like a whole new reason. Uh, well, well, at the time of this recording, y'all, we're recording this on Tuesday, 9/10, the day before 9/11. So just mean things about that. So that's all of it on its own. But for us, right, the day before on 9/9 it was a sad day for everybody. It was as if we experienced a massive loss, and suddenly the hearts of all Star Wars fans have shattered in an instant, because James Earl Jones, the GOAT himself of acting and voice acting himself, has passed away. Now, if you somehow lived under a rock your entire life and don't know who James Earl Jones is, let me go ahead and give you a rundown of James Earl Jones and his extensive and quite varied acting credits. All right. He was Mufasa from both the live action and the OG Lion King. We got ourselves King Jaffa coming to America. Admiral James Greer from The Hunt for Red October. He was in Conan the Barbarian. And that is just a small taste. But the biggest thing that everyone here probably heard him for he's the voice behind the GOAT himself, Darth Vader. Think about it. Like, this man has so much range as a person. His voice, his baritone voice, you can recognize it anywhere. And this hurts, all right? This hurts, but I can at least say that, at least unlike Akira Toriyama, this man lived a very long and very fulfilled life. He died at the age of 93 of natural causes. To make it to 93 on its own is actually quite incredible, and is amazing blessing and everything. And he was still up and active for a good minute. Even up, like, he retired in 2022 from acting. Like, his last role was in Coming to America 2. Or at least that was his last on screen, and then his last voice acting was Darth Vader in Kenobi. So yeah, like, the man was still going hard at it, and he is just, again, his legacy can't be stated enough. And it hurts that we lost him, but it doesn't hurt as much because of the fact he lived to 93 and he lived a full life. So he was able to see and feel like his legacy, like, everybody gave that man his flowers. I'm not gonna lie to you. If only I was able to meet the man and give him his flowers personally, but unfortunately, you can't do that. Have to do it posthumously. And so, yeah, just RIP to the GOAT, in case you want to talk about that.
Yeah, it was crazy. Like, we recorded like the previous Saturday, finished editing on Monday, essentially scheduled the episode. Then you just texted me, "Oh man, we lost the GOAT." And I'm like, "Oh, here we go." And then just to see that, yeah, James Earl Jones passed away. Obviously sad, because he had like such an impact on a lot of people's childhoods. Like, with Star Wars, spanning decades, it's touched a lot of generations. Lion King is one of the most popular just films, not even anime, just films of all time. And like, the voice of Mufasa is so legendary. And then even just like that, he's also like a very prominent on Broadway. So like with Fences, like there is the Fences movie with Denzel Washington, but you can look on YouTube and also see like he does that. He played the father in the Fences on Broadway, and just like even how intense that scene is, where it's like, oh, what makes you? Who tells me that I'm supposed to love you or like you or something like that. So yeah, just like extensive. So definitely we wanted to take the time, since we couldn't do it in the previous episode, but definitely wanted to do it in this episode just to give him his flowers. Definitely a big impact. And I know when you go to, is it called SpaceCon?
Yep.
When you go to SpaceCon October, I'm pretty sure they're going to have to give him some kind of send off or like appreciation there, which will probably be super emotional, to be honest with you.
I was like, I just need to see what Hayden says about it.
Yeah.
I know I will be broken.
Yeah. So with that, we just like I mentioned before, we definitely had to give a just like credit, love, give him his flowers to James Earl Jones, a definite legend. So we're gonna take a break and then come back with the normally scheduled episode. All right. So I'm Demetrius.
And I'm Demetrius.
And Meet presents
the Blerd City podcast.
All right, so a lot of things have had to get moved around with this episode. We were going to this week be doing our Transformers 1 movie review episode, but that got pushed back a week, so we ended up doing a Spawn Deconstruction Reconstruction, which we were going to do next week, which would have gave us more time to prep for it, and then also life schedule, so we're kind of like recording back-to-back in a sense. But with that, Spawn is a character that is near and dear to both our hearts, particularly you, Meech. Definitely with the comics. Spawn, I feel like, is one of those characters that if you say him, people know him, but they're not too familiar with him. It's kind of like an awareness of Spawn and wanting to see more, kind of like a Ghost Rider in a sense, along with their similarity. So with that, we're going to do a deconstruction of the movie that happened in 1997. But before we get into that, we're going to hit you with the legal spiegel.
All right. So the purpose of this podcast is to explore digital and print media. All sources we reference are owned by their respective companies, and our thoughts and opinions are strictly our own and reflect no biases or corporate agenda. Your discretion is advised.
All right. So for the deconstruction, reconstruction, what we aim to do is work together to save, reboot, or redo a movie, TV show, comic, game that is universally panned or fail to live up to expectations. So our previous two that are on the main podcast, we did X-Men Origins Wolverine, and then we also did the Star Wars sequels. Me just trying to uphold his upchuck. Our Patreon has much worse ones. We did Spider-Man One More Day. We did the Fantastic Four, the 2015 one. There was another one we did that I think I blotted from my mind, but I can't remember it. But
good.
Yeah. So with that, explain the rules. So each person gets 3 vetoes, which you'll hear this sound. That cancels an idea or proposal from the other host. Each person gets 3 lock-ins, which supersedes a veto, and you'll hear this sound. So to avoid pettiness, we're trying to avoid saying, if you veto this, I'm just going to lock it in. Or if you veto X, then I'm just going to veto Y. Particularly an already agreed upon idea. The case is to work together to build these out. So it's broken down into multiple sections. So starting with the case study, the deconstruction, where we take apart the product, movie, TV show, like I mentioned, the bad parts of it. Then we go into the reconstruction, rebuilding it out into something that is watchable, playable, or readable. And then after that, we'll recap with the summary. So you ready, Meech?
About as ready as I can be.
All right. Let's get it. All right, so the case study is Spawn 1997 with the main guy, Michael Jai White playing Spawn. So just with the case study, a few of the highlights. The studio was New Line Cinema. The director was Mark A.Z. Dippe. I believe that's how you say it. Interesting for this was his debut directorial film. So that was something that I made note of. For the box office numbers, I found it very interesting. So it made about $88 million on a $40 to $45 million budget. So it essentially doubled up its budget. Unfortunately, the audience and critic scores. So with IMDb, it got a 5.2. Rotten Tomatoes, it got a 17%. And Cinema Score, which is really hard to grade bad on, got a C+. For the next part, any interesting backstory, Meech, what you got for that?
All right, here we go. All right, here's the lowdown upon this Spawn movie. So as we all know, Spawn is the man-child of Todd McFarlane. In fact, he created his own comic book studio known as Image Comics to create Spawn. Because of the fact that he didn't like the fact that he had no creative control over the characters that he drew over at Marvel. So he created a whole company just to do that with Spawn. So you think with that, it's like, okay, he wants to get a movie. Because, of course, the comic came out in 1992, wildly successful, gangbusters, all that good jazz. And he's like, okay, now it's time for a movie. So he basically tried to negotiate with another studio, Columbia Pictures, I believe, to create the Spawn movie. But what he wanted creative control over the entire movie, which Columbia Pictures, they're like, one, you're not a director, so we're gonna ixnay that out right out the gate. So negotiation fell through. Instead, he decided to go with New Line Cinema, as you described. He actually gave the film rights to New Line Cinema for $1. You want to know why he gave it for $1? So he could have creative control and creative input, as well as the merchandising rights. And in case you also don't know, Todd McFarlane, he also has like a very successful toy company and that he does himself. So the merchandising rights, bam, gives him like access to create a bunch of Spawn toys based off the movie and just go nuts with that. Also, another thing is the fact that this movie was touted is a PG-13 movie. The reason this is important is because of the fact that New Line Cinema's president at the time was like, hey, we gonna make this movie, but it has to be PG-13. There can be no rated R-ness in this whatsoever, and you definitely see it. Also, Mark A.Z.'s Dippy, again, as you mentioned, his directorial debut, and the fact that the person who wrote the script for this movie, the writer, he actually wrote a few of the Spawn comics, and he also wrote most of the episodes of the Spawn animated series, to which he gave and this is kind of a spoiler for how we gonna feel about this movie, is the fact that he said that if you want to see like my work on Spawn, watch the animated series and not the movie.
Do you recall what year the animated series came out?
The animated series came out in 97, the same year as the movie. Basically, 1997 was touted as the year of Spawn because, again, as you said, the movie, the TV series, the comics, the action figures / toys, he going crazy. I believe this is also the year that Spawn crossed over with Batman. So yeah, like Spawn is going crazy. Spawn is in the cultural zeitgeist. Spawn is outselling both Marvel and DC at the time because of the fact of clones. But yeah, so that just lets you know like how much Spawn is in like the sphere of everybody, like everybody fiending for Spawn. Pun fully intended. But yeah, so like the writer said like, hey, if you want like a true pure experience of Spawn and like want to see like what my true interpretation is, watch the series, not the movie, because of how much executive meddling took place within the movie, as well as meddling from Todd McFarlane himself.
All right. And then just one more thing with Mark Dippe, the director. He was known for visual effects. He did it on Jurassic Park, Terminator, the first Jurassic Park, Terminator 2, which is touted as one of probably the best Terminator movie, and then also The Abyss. But most of his directorial exploits after this movie have all been like kids movies or cartoon movies, which I found very interesting, the shift in tone. So going from there, so when this movie came out, we were both 1.5. So whenever you were old enough to watch this movie or rewatch the movie, wherever you want to take it from, what were your personal feelings about it?
Okay, so when I first watched it as a young lad, I loved it because of the fact like, A, it's a black man, he looks like Spider-Man and Venom both together, and he got chains, and he was out here putting folks in the dirt. I mean, that was perhaps the coolest thing I could have ever seen as a child, as an impressionable child. Looking back on it now, I have the exact opposite reaction. I'm like, what is this garbage? Like, it physically hurts to watch this movie because of the fact it aged so poorly. And like primarily the special effects on this movie was not it. It was not it at all.
You hit so many of my notes already.
Look, I'm sorry. I have to say it. I have to say it. them effects is god awful.
We'll get to it in the deconstruction. Lord have mercy.
I'm about to destroy this movie right now, and I'm not even there. All right, I know what? I'm a refrain. I'm a refrain. Also, another thing is the fact that there were so many changes from the comics to the movies, which again, as a child, I did not know. But after reading it and seeing, I'm like, why?
Mm-hmm.
I know the reason why now, from the analysis and from like my research into this movie. But still, geez.
All right. So do you want to cover that in deconstruction part, some of the changes, or touch on it now?
You know what? Let's touch on it now while we're here. All right. So here's kind of like, basically there's two things that there are major changes in this movie that were kind of egregious. Number one is a race swap of a major character in this movie. His name's Terry Fitzgerald. He's like the best friend of Spawn, who after he was killed for the first time, he goes and marries his best friend's wife. Yeah, he marries Wanda. And of course has a child. Originally, in the comic, he's black. In the movie, they made him white. You want to know why they did that?
Why?
Because of the fact that it was made by the studio due to the reason that, hey, there was too many black leads in the movie already.
You know what's interesting about that, considering it was 1997, is that they had an interracial couple on screen.
Mm-hmm. In 97. But yeah, it's like they wanted to portray, it's like, okay, there's too many black leads in this movie. We don't want to make it seem like, oh, this is for the African-American demographic only. I'm like, bro. And also, it's the fact that, also another reason that's probably pure speculation, but it could possibly be true, is the fact that, okay, think about like all of the antagonists of that movie. They were all white or demon.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, they're all white or demons. So like for Spawn, it's like, okay, we have a black lead facing off against white characters who are in league with Satan. Oh no. Oh no. No, let's have a white man come in there and also be a good guy and a good character. Okay, let's save the day. Woo! All right, we're gonna save our conscience there. Yes, I probably gonna get canceled there, but I don't care. All right.
I think you might be onto something on it.
Oh no, I know I'm cooking with that one. I know I am. All right, so now change number 2 is probably even more egregious.
Okay.
It's the introduction of a whole new character named Jessica Priest. So Jessica Priest in the movie, full spoiler, she's the one who kills Al Simmons. And in the movie, however, it's this character named Chapel, who was created by Rob Liefeld in Youngblood. He's a black man. He was also best friends with Al Simmons before betraying and murdering him in cold blood before becoming an anti-hero on Youngblood. Now, the reason that they changed that part out completely is the fact that at Image Comics, whoever created the character has full creative rights to said character. And as such, you'd have to pay royalties to that person in order to use them. Since this was about to be a big blockbuster movie, Todd McFarlane did not want to pay Rob Liefeld to use Chapel for this movie. And it says like, okay, let's create the character of Jessica Priest to be his killer, and then add her to the comics and retcon it in the fact that she killed him in the comic book version as well, and Spawn just misremembered that it was Chapel, just so he could not pay Rob Liefeld any type of money to use his character.
So with how great of a comic creator Todd McFarlane is, some of this you're thinking is, well, not thinking, but some of this is on him for the badness of the movie?
Oh, 100%. Because he's a decent comic creator. Artist? Okay, I'll give him that. He's a great artist, phenomenal artist. Is World of Spider-Man? Legendary. As a writer, he's okay. Because at least as of right now, it's just like, bro, you're writing the same wave over and over again for issues. Like certain it feels like the One Piece filler of comic books. Yes, I said it. Spawn is the One Piece of it when it comes to the length of the series. Just so many arcs that just keep going in cycles, and it seems to be going nowhere. And even when it develops to somewhere, things get sent right back to status quo and just rinse and repeat. I ain't with that. But yeah, so like he's a decent writer for being able to do this for so long. In terms of a filmmaker and trying to translate things to film, one, doesn't work, and B, at the end of the day, he's also a shrewd businessman. And as a businessman, he's making decisions in order to secure more of that money, which is why I think he said no to using Chapel at all.
Well, like we did mention, the movie did double the budget. So for the next part, you kind of answered how it aged. So like for me, when I first watched it, like you, I definitely enjoyed the movie as a young kid. I don't remember the last time I watched it, but like as I've grown up and what you mentioned with the aging, the visual effects are definitely 90s visual effects. The CGI where it's just like, oof. Like that end scene where he's like fighting the demons and stuff. And it's like, ooh. And then we're going to talk about the clown. That's going to be a lot in the deconstruction part. But here's a question for you, because again, we had that same kind of initial reaction of liking the movie when we first saw it. Is this a cult classic?
I consider it a guilty pleasure. Cult classic? You giving it that banner is kind of crazy. I'm not gonna lie. As I said, like this is like one of those where it's like I'd only rewatch it because of the fact that I'm a Spawn guy, and even then, that only takes it so far with me. Like I am not gonna go out of my way to rewatch that movie. I'm not gonna lie. I would rather rewatch the Ghost Rider movie before watching this.
Which one? The first one or the second one?
What you think? The first one.
Would you rather watch the second Ghost Rider or one Spawn?
I'd rather watch Spawn before I watch that second Ghost Rider movie. I'm not gonna lie. It's like, yeah, my eyes are gonna be bleeding, but at least it's something.
Right.
The other one, I'm just like, I'm out.
All right. So kind of with that, what was good about the movie? That's another part that we highlight in the case study.
All right. So things that are good about it is, for me, Michael J. White as Al Simmons and John Leguizamo as Violator the Clown, because of the fact like those two really got it as the characters, and I actually saw Michael J. White like, yeah, that's Al Simmons, all right. And he definitely, because again, martial artist, I've seen him in other stuff, like yeah, he embodied that role, and then like he embodies him physically. I ain't talking about the voice. The voice goes, that's Keith David all day. John Leguizamo, again, he also embodied that role to be a disgusting clown, and also seeing like the behind the scenes of what he had to do in order to do that, in order to embody that role. And it's just like, couldn't be me. But yeah, like those were the two highlights of this movie.
Great. All right, so now we're going to transition to the deconstruction part. So this is where we specifically mention parts of the movie that can be taken out. So that ranges from obvious flaws, like we talked about, visual effects or something we're going to get into, marketing, poor character casting decisions, studio creative visual limitations, bad story beats, or timing of the movie. So we did touch on some of that so far, but I think with the timing of the movie, I think that's what hurt the visual effects partially. But I mean, there's movies that came out previously that more of them use like practical effects. But definitely like in the late 90s, it was the start of CGI, and then you saw a lot of like bad, like really bad CGI in that time. So I think that's kind of like what corrupted the movie. I don't know how much you can get into practical effects with it, since obviously that's not like something that we specialize in, but like obviously like, you know, the hell scene when he's like, like I mentioned, those look really awful. It's funny that you mentioned Violator. That was one of the part of the movies that I wanted to talk about, because I feel like people felt some type of way about Violator.
Okay, so, well, then again, he was very true to the character. He was disgusting, foul-mouthed, well, not as foul-mouthed as he should have been, but,
right.
And just utterly disgusting. Of course, like, when he transforms into his demon Violator form, Okay, like you can tell when they're using CGI, and you can tell when they were using actual onset effects, like actual practical effect. And I'm just like, with that character, right? You could definitely do a lot more with him. And honestly, in my opinion, he should have been the main villain for the entire movie. Like, no Malbosia whatsoever. Like, you could, if you got rid of all the scenes of hell, except for maybe like,
Grace gets his powers, maybe.
Yeah,
but that's in the reconstruction part where we can.
Yeah. We can touch on that a little bit later. But yeah, if you got rid of the scenes in hell, like, and you don't show Malbosia at all, because y'all did not have the budget to show that demon, and also he did not even look like Malbosia, how he does in the comics. But still, you could have done much better than that. That's like Sonic levels of budgeting. Like literally, Malbosia in the movie was ugly Sonic.
Yeah, that's fair.
So I think in terms of things like, in terms of like what I think like should have been taken out or like deconstructed, budget. I mean, y'all could have made it a lot more budgety, but if not, and you had to work with what you had, there were definitely ways you could make that work. Like, for example, the fact Spawn's cape and how the fact like, okay, like, he had the Spawn cape and it was flowing and extra, that part with CGI, I was like, okay, I get that. You can like that. I'm like, all right. But then whenever he's in the suit and he removes the cape, just fully disappears, I like,
that's fair. Yeah, just Venom.
Yeah, I was like, at that point, it's like, that's very Venom, my guy. You could have just gave him a regular old cape and like just made it so like, hey, it just like the effect of it is that it whisks and then it retracts into a normal cape. That would have worked fine, at least in my opinion. And you could make like that cape appear to be larger or smaller, however much you want, using the CGI. Now, another thing is the fact that you kept showing Simmons' face even when he was in the Spawn costume.
Yeah.
Bro, we came here for the mask. Put that mask on.
So the Deadpool route?
I say Deadpool route for like after... Yeah, Deadpool right for most of it, because of the fact like in the comics, like most of the time he wears the mask until like very important scenes where you see him without it. That develops the character. So yeah.
All right, so with that, we kind of mentioned casting decisions, so I think just like the Terry Fitzgerald thing we can take out and switch that back, and then the Jessica Priest, how do you feel about that?
Make her Chapel, because that also solves the studio's issue with race. Like, okay, you want to tell a story about like, oh yeah, you got a bunch of like good black people versus the evil whites. Like, all right, have an evil black man in there.
All right, go ahead.
Oh yeah, I also gonna mention like, hey, if you wanted like some good whites, there are two good characters that y'all could have had in there.
Wait, hold on, saying good whites is crazy.
If you want some good, I'm just saying based on that, I'm just calling it how it is.
Oh my god. Yeah, who are they?
Their names are Sam and Twitch, the cops. They're basically the Gordon and Bullock of the Spawn world. You could have had them in there and it would have worked.
Interesting. All right. So anything with Jason Wynn? Since you were saying that you kind of wanted, Jason Wynn's the one that plans the betrayal, right?
Yes. And he's kind of needed.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So, because I know you were saying make Violator the main villain, so I wasn't sure. We can get more to in the reconstruction part whether we want to make this a revenge one or we just want to straight go to the out of pocket, hell and demons type thing.
Honestly, I say like it can be both with like it can be both with like the first like portion of the plot dedicated to the revenge act. And then like we learn, okay, there's more demons, like he's like Violator, like he actually say like, okay, nah, like for example, like he like Spawn has Jason Wynn dead to rights and And then Violator pulls up, it's like, oh yeah, nah, you ain't doing it because you weak sauce. All right, then I'm taking over then. That's like the main antagonist. But yeah, it's like Jason Wynn, he has to be in the movie. Not sure if he should be played by Martin Sheen though.
that was a cast change that I was thinking of.
Not sure if he should be played by Martin Sheen, because Martin Sheen is giving real good man vibes.
Mm-hmm.
Jason Wynn needs to be an utterly irredeemable, just I need him dead type of caster.
I want to talk about the timing of the movie, about changing it, but the placement of it, we can save it for the reconstruction, because I think, again, like we mentioned, the timing of the movie didn't help, because superhero movies... When was the first Blade? I know it was the 90s, was it?
98. Okay,
so movies, like superhero movies, like other than the Batman series and the Superman series, weren't really hitting like that at the times. And then especially like, because like Batman Forever, Batman and Robin type movies did not do great at all. So kind of like
let me just double check when Batman Forever Batman Forever was 95, so 2 years before, and then Batman and Robin was 97.
Oh, that was not the year.
That was not it. This was not it, boys.
So again, special effects just in the 90s, I think people found the tool that they wanted to use. It was kind of like the early stages of ChatGPT, and it wasn't it. So I think definitely taking this movie, since we can place it anywhere we want, I want to take it out of that range. Definitely not pre-Blade from that perspective.
Oh yeah, 100%, because I feel like Blade was kind of like that introduction to superheroes, especially for the African American community, because even my parents, they watch Blade and they love that movie. So, and this is before like they knew, or at least to my recollection, know anything about like the character and the comics and whatnot behind Blade. So I think like putting Spawn like after it goes like, okay, y'all got Blade, but hey, here's another African-American anti-hero. I was about to say superhero. It's like, nah, he ain't no superhero. An anti-hero film that I believe like the black delegation, like we could definitely like rally more behind. Especially if I think, let me see when Blade 2 came out. 02. All right. Yeah, it's like if you could saddle it either between Blade 1 and Blade 2, or even have it after Blade 2, it could work.
And I'm just checking the rating of Blade. Was it R?
Oh no, remember there was yeah.
So it was R?
Oh yeah, it was rated R.
So that kind of then solves the Spawn. So we get two things. If we wait till after Blade, at least it solves the two things of making Spawn, which is like kind of like Deadpool, where it really needs to be a rated R character. And then you also have the Black Lead thing, where it kind of, you don't have those cast changes. Well, at least one of the cast changes that we saw. So that kind of, then you're building off of that and kind of like leading into the 2000s with your Spider-Man and so forth and so on. So I think we definitely have some things that we took out, visual effects being kind of the main thing. Is there any story beats that we want to take out? Because we haven't really touched on the story of like what we found like bad about.
Okay, I think like one for me is the fact like Jason Wynn should not interact with like the hellish side of Spawn's lore, like the religious side, because that does not happen until like way later down the line. Like in terms of when this happens, I believe like around the 2000s is when like Jason Wynn finally gets into like the full supernatural side of the lore. Whereas, like, again, back then, those two were exclusive to each other, with maybe, like, Violator on the supernatural side egging Spawn on to, like, go murder Wynn.
All right. Sounds good.
And then also, again, Jessica Priest needs to go. I'm sorry.
Again, that feels slightly casting thing, but we definitely, I think we picked out some of the key points of it. So with that, we're going to get into a quick sponsor break and then come back with the reconstruction, rebuilding the movie essentially from the ground up.
All right, so for today's sponsor, we have none other than The Scorched. If you want to join a team of supernatural heroes able to be the defense between you and the forces of hell, come join The Scorched today and be sure that you won't get burned by the flames of hell.
All right, so we're back with the reconstruction part. So this is the part where it's easy to tear something down. It's much harder to build it back up. So with that, we can get into cast, character changes, clarify the timeline, direction of the movie, tone of the movie, build out the plot. So the thing that I wanted to talk about with just like the timing of the movie. So if we do it post Blade, we still had the issue of if we do post Dark Knight, we have a clown problem. Because as superhero fans, we are obsessed with Joker post Dark Knight. Like every Batman entity that comes out, they always tease a Joker, even when Joker's not in the story. Like with The Batman, perfect movie. They were like, hey, let's fit a Joker in like for the last 5 minutes. Cape Crusader that we just watched, good series. Nothing ties in really. You have like kind of like a Harley Quinzel type thing, even though like a lot of it, like the backstories are different. Quick Joker tease at the end. Even just like everything has a Joker tease. Obviously, the Snyder, they were definitely teasing that out for a while. So with that, we have a Joker problem. Then we also have Pennywise the Clown. So 2 It movies came out. So I'm thinking because I know Violator is like his base form, like not true form, but is a clown. So we can't like really get away from that to an extent.
Yep, no, absolutely not. He has to be a clown.
So when do we put this? Because I think that's the issue. And then we also have to take into account visual effects.
I think if you want to like go based off of that, I think you could like put it like in the early 2000s, like or sandwich. Well, I wouldn't necessarily say sandwich it in between, but you can like actually you could like sandwich it in between Blade 1 and Blade 2, which is like came out in like 2002, and then like it can be like one of the main reasons like, hey, superheroes can like pop off because X-Men would have been a thing, Spider-Man would have been a thing, so like hey, superheroes would be starting to come up, and then in comes Spawn to like also like be a forerunner of that.
I like that. So just like early 2000s, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
All right.
They also can semi-help with the visual effects too, because they got better. They got better.
That's fair. And then with the marketing thing, so since this is an early 2000s thing, I'm thinking we come out with a Spawn video game to sell.
I mean, technically they already did, but yeah, you can do that again too. Spawn the movie, the game.
Like literally every superhero movie that came out in the early 2000s.
Yep.
All right. So anything we want to do with the cast, I kind of like you mentioned, I really like the cast that we have so far. Just like with the main people, Michael Jai White, I think can stay as Spawn. I was thinking that the voice of Malboja could be Keith David, just to kind of have that tie-in. I don't know how you feel about that.
I don't know, man, because I don't get those vibes from I don't get Keith David vibes from Malboja. I get like
get our Candyman.
No, I'm not even feeling Candyman. No, like the voice of Malboja, I feel like it's slightly kind of like higher pitched or like something like shrilly, if you will. I don't know like who that voice could be, but you could even make it like Tim Curry if you wanted to. But hey, if you wanted to be either of them, like you can make that work as long as we do not see that man. I mean that demon.
That's fair.
That's all I care about. Do not show us Malboja.
All right, so kind of with that, who are you thinking for the villains in the movie?
All right, so the main villains are Jason Wynn, Violator, and Chapel.
Okay.
There are
lock that in.
Yes, I want to lock that in. Those are our main 3. Get Jessica Priest out of here. Get her out of here, man.
Okay, so do we want to make this an origin story? That's also key. Because again, like I feel like with Spawn, like with Spider-Man, you don't have to do an origin story. With Batman, you don't have to do an origin story. Spawn, I feel like with it being new, he kind of needs an origin story to an extent.
Yeah, he does, but I kind of like the way that of like it's being piecemealed for us. Like as like we start off with Spawn already being Spawn, and then like we're kind of like slow, like as he's slowly getting his memories back, we're learning about it.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like in at the same time he is. So there's like no surprise. Well, there's full of surprises, and we're like not having a case of dramatic irony.
Okay, so we're kickstarting with him already as Spawn, and it's kind of like a, I forgot, memento type thing where he's remembering throughout the course of the story.
Yeah, and like that way, if you're seeing like characters like, oh yeah, you see Jason Wynn and Chapel interacting with like Terry Fitzgerald for like the first time, and they're just chilling, and then as he like Spawn, like he slowly remembers like, hey, I don't like any of those characters, but I don't remember why. And then you learn the reason why Chapel and Jason Wynn are there, and you just go like, oh.
Mm-hmm. All right, so remembering his past in this is of course an R-rated movie.
Yes.
That'll be my lock-in.
Okay. Yep. It has to be. I need blood. I need everything.
So if we're doing it where it's an origin story, and he's already as Spawn, how do we do, like, what's the plot of it in terms of like, because that would mean the revenge would have to come. It would have to play out over the course of the story, but in the meantime, we would need something at the present, like in our face as a plot line.
Well, I mean, this is actually very simple, kind of similar to how it was done in the animated series, where folks just randomly do just jacked up stuff in his neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
Like you could have like corrupted members of the CIA like going in, probably like shaking up and like killing folks like inside of the alleys where Spawn is at, and Spawn is like slowly starting to go like, nah, I don't like that, and just goes on a murder spree and just kills them. And then like that's when you start getting Jason Wynn involved. He's like, hold on, somebody's killing our men. Like somebody's killing our men, and we need to investigate.
Interesting.
And then over time, we start building that interpersonal connection between the two as Wynn slowly like starts figuring out like what the heck's going on, while Spawn is slowly remembering who his ops are.
So some of this is like triggering. Does Chapel works for Wynn?
Yes.
Okay, so we can kind of do it like with an Abomination type Hulk situation where it's like, oh, I don't know, like if you mentioned Chapel becomes something later on, we obviously don't have to put that in the movie. We might be doing too much in that case, but like he could be interacting with Chapel initially, and it kind of like one trigger, boom, another trigger later through an interaction, that remembering Jason Wynn and stuff like that.
Or because of the fact of just how amazing that issue was of Spawn just absolutely beating the tar out of Chapel, you could have it be like, hey, they fight for the first time, and like perhaps like Spawn's like in like a moment where he's like depowered or like he's weakened, and he somewhat loses, or maybe like he has to like escape / protect others, and Chapel escapes. Then he remembers who Chapel is, and like why? No, he remembers who Chapel is, but he doesn't remember why Chapel killed him. Then he comes back for round 2 with them guns and just goes ham on him, and that's when Chapel reveals that it was Wynn who killed him or who ordered him to die, and then Spawn starts remembering more, all while Violator is still kind of like in the background / playing in his ear. Well, actually, not even in the background, because you gotta have that man. Yeah, he just has to be out here like messing with him in like the daylight.
Okay, so let's build the first plot line out. So thinking, all right, so we have like the Jason Wynn's men violating the alleys, obviously. So that first real Spawn reveal is kind of just like, oh, massacres the men with that. Then this is what I'm trying to think, because we could kind of have it where it's Chapel, he's in that massacre, he runs away and he like tells one the situation, so that already puts like the tie-in. So he's the first one to see it. Oh, how do we like weaken it? Second fight, I'm not sure how we get him to that weakened state. We can kind of discuss it. Maybe like he sees Fitzgerald with Wanda after a fight or something like that, or like that's where like the Violator tie-in comes in for that second fight where Chapel gets the win. If you kind of like feel my vibe.
Okay, yeah. So there are like 3 ways you can like kind of weaken him. Number one, like as a him seeing Wanda, because like he remembers. He's like, oh yeah, I remember my wife. He goes, sees her, sees her with his best friend. He remembers that, like, oh, that's my best friend, and he married my wife. And like maybe, or you can like have him like go to, like ends up at his own grave, and like he's digging up his own grave and sees like his body is still there, and it's like, the heck is this? And he's all types of befuddled. Or you can have it to be where, I don't know, like, actually, that would probably be even more deeply into the religious angle, because there's an area of, like, the alleys where if he's called a dead zone, where if he steps into that area, he loses his powers as long as he's in that area. So theoretically, like, he could go there. Or you can have it to be where he's using his powers, because of that, like in the Spawn comics, like he's just using, like when he first appears, he's using his powers all types of recklessly. Like he doesn't know like that he has like a power meter, and using up all his powers is slowly draining him and slowly gonna send him to his second death. So, oh wait, hold on, that could tie into like the power meter, like the power meter mechanic. Be like, okay, like maybe he uses up like too much power and it weakens him for a time to where he could lose the fight.
Maybe potentially, yeah. With that, like we have the first fight of Destruction, like he's using that, riding the high of it. Then whatever our second plot line is with Violator comes in, where he has to use his powers related to that. And then once he like loses his powers, he kind of like sees, I know all his hands, like his whole body's burnt up, right?
Yes.
I'm trying to think of a way where he sees himself as like not being burnt up or whatever, where he's like, oh, I'm human again, I don't have like the Spawn powers on me. And then he goes to be like, oh, I can go back to Wanda. And then with that, it's the first time that he sees her, she sees him, and she's absolutely terrified of it, because obviously he's like, he's like, Wanda, I'm back. And she's like, oh, you look like a monster. So he's like, oh, what are you talking about? He sees himself for the first time, and he sees the scars, and it's like, boom, goes back to the alleys. I see your cooking. So what you got?
This happened in the comics. So like one random day, like he just wakes up and he's fully healed. He tries going back to Wanda, but then like right before he gets to her, he deforms once again. And it's just like, oh,
Violator could do that to him with the help of Malboga, maybe? Or maybe?
Or it could be to where, like, hey, like, Violator can, like, kind of, because of that, like, I don't know how you feel about Cogliostro kind of, like, being his mentor figure.
I didn't mind it. I thought they had, like, a cool dynamic in the movie, but I don't know, like, I'm not too familiar with the comic Spawn, so, like, with that, I don't know how, like, if that's real or not.
Well, initially it was, and then it turns out he was just using them the entire time. But yeah, it's like, initially it could be like, hey, Cogliostro's teaching him like how to use, like slowly cryptically telling him like, hey, you should kind of be more responsible with your abilities. And then Violator's like kind of teasing him like, hey, you should use your powers like this. And you should like kind of tell him like, hey, pretty much being the metaphorical devil on his shoulder, pun fully intended, that like, hey, you should be using your powers more recklessly, because of the fact that Violator, he absolutely hates spawns. He hates spawns because of the fact that, like, hey, I'm an actual pure-blooded demon, but somehow you human got the favor of Malbolgia to lead Hell's army when that job should have belonged to me. So I'm going to ensure that you get your second death before you can do anything to please Malbolgia and try to get you to die your second death much quicker. And then, so like, that's why he's egging him on to like kill Win, use his powers recklessly and all that. But Cagliostro is like trying to be the one to convince like, hey, this clown ain't good for you.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end, that's when Violator be like, okay, nah, I need to kill you personally.
Okay, so I like that. So with that, we can have it essentially first framing of like, obviously he's destroying Wen's men, and Violator this entire time is coming off, I don't want to say friendly, like it'll be like, oh, you know, he's up to something, but it's like, he's like, I am an ally of Spawn, pushing him, until the point where, okay, that power meter is decreasing. So when he does kind of depower temporarily, I don't know if Violator has like magical powers to kind of make him look whole again temporarily, like to trick him.
Oh, no. He doesn't have that power. That's why I was saying like he could like kind of put it in Spawn's ear that he can do it because,
okay,
well, I know in the comics, like he can transform, but initially he couldn't control what he looked like.
Okay.
But you can just like scrap that part and make it like, hey, bam, transforms into himself again.
So we can do it, like egging him on, and for us, like, oh, the transformations can walk, and Violator could be the one that's like, hey, Terry took your girl. You should go speak to her. You should go holler at her, say hello, knowing what will happen like when he meets her. So when that happens, that's when he like loses his power. He sees like what he actually looks like. And then that can lead into the fight with Chapel, where he gets his butt whipped.
Yeah, and at that point, he's just like, because he's so weakened, like, you get to see like all the emotions on like his face. Like it won't be enough for him to even generate the mask on his face.
Mm-hmm.
That he's just getting whipped until potentially the suit itself like gets him out of there.
And that can be like when the mask falls off the first time that Chapel recognizes, oh, this is Al.
Oh no, he still won't recognize him. Well, I mean, you could, but
burn beyond belief.
But he can make it seem like, wait, this guy like seems kind of familiar-ish. I can't put my finger on where.
Maybe he goes like, you killed me or something like that.
You got to do that, or like again, like they're just, or that's why I'm saying like in their final fight, that's when it fully clicks in for Chapel to where like he starts saying stuff that only Al knew.
Okay, my question, because it frames how long Chapel is in the story, are we killing Win in this story?
No.
Okay, so Chapel's the one bad A, and then Violator one bad B.
Yes, because I feel like Win, he should be alive, but he's not gonna get off scot-free.
Okay.
Like he's going to get his behind whooped by Spawn, kind of like towards the climax of the film.
Okay.
Like what I'm thinking is, okay, he defeats him. Now, like he defeats Chapel and gives Chapel like his iconic skull face, where, because originally he, like, in case you guys don't know, Chapel, like he draws like a skull, face paints a skull on his face. When Spawn got a hold of him the first time, he rips the skin off of Chapel's face to where it is actually his skull.
Jesus.
Like he just like, no, just rips it right on off. And Chapel's like face is a pure skull the entire time until he himself turns into a demon in but that's not for this scene. That's not for it.
Okay, so with that, after the second fight where Spawn loses and his shadow or his cloak, however you want to describe it, takes him away, that can take him back to his actual grave where he does see his body.
Yeah, as a kind of defense mechanism. So it's like, hey, this is where you were born. And that's where Cagliostro can come out and be like, hey, like, and that's where he's like, just again, starts like mentoring him a lot more. Mm-hmm. It also kind of reminds Al of more of his like strategic / like CIA training.
Mm-hmm.
Because for the entirety of this movie, he was just moving off instinct and off just pure vibes and magic. This time, he becomes more grounded.
Okay, so my one question is with Spawn, since he, and this will be more of a Violator plot, since he is tasked with leading Hell's Army eventually, but obviously he's a good guy and we need to kind of know that he doesn't do that. What's like the moment where he's like, nah, fam? Because I feel like we have to have that moment for him to be like, I'm just kind of like here for revenge, or I'm not like about that situation.
The moment where he just says no to being like being Hell's general, or
I feel like that has to happen.
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, maybe it's like something dealing with like Violator could like say something about Cyan, the daughter, the daughter of like Terry and Wanda, or like have it to where like, hey, she's like gonna get kidnapped or like endanger any y'all, and like, hey, and then like he tells like, hey, this is for the good of Hell's army. Like, if this little girl dies or something like that, he just says no. That or like as Cagliostro's like mentoring him, like telling like, hey, like you made a deal with Malbolgia, like, or like everybody's like, hey, you made this deal, and then you cut back to him like remembering what the deal was. Like, this is where we found out like what the actual deal was. Like after him getting his behind whooped, and like because like you could sprinkle it throughout the movies about like with Violator telling him like, hey, you made a deal, or Cagliostro talking about, hey, you made a deal, and at that moment it's like he remembers what that deal is to like lead Hell's Army in exchange for going to see his wife one more time, and yeah, and now as for like, hey, that moment when he says, nah, I'm not gonna do it.
So it can be like a combo thing where it's like, okay, throughout the course of the movie, he's remembering that he had a deal. And then it's like, oh, I'm leading Hell's armies, ... That means I'm going to kill Wanda, her child, and then also Terry, who has been good to Wanda and was my best friend. And then that's where he's like, no.
Potentially. Or it could be like where like him as Spawn, like so enraged over the fact that like, that Terry was with Wanda, that he kind of goes after him a little bit. And it's like, you took my woman, and then he's like, no, like, you died, man. And that's when he slowly realized like, oh, like, or like the Violator is kind of like chugging his ear, and he's like, oh, this is what he meant, like becoming part of Hell's Army. Because the only way to be Hell's general is to get rid of all things connecting him to his human life.
Dude, that can be during the part where he sees Wanda for the first time, and then Terry's like, Wanda, are you okay? And like over the course, he's remembering that. So then when he's holding him up, that's when he sees his face.
Yes, he sees his face, and then like as he's looking out, then that's when like the little girl comes out.
Yes, yeah. Lock it in.
And he's like, oh, God, what have I done? What am I?
And then so like when he goes into the battle with Chapel, his head is all over the place, and he just sees himself as the monster. And he's also like doesn't have his powers at the time. So that's where like, yeah, again, gets his butt whooped, goes to get help with Cagliostro. So once like they leave the grave, we're essentially in the climax of the movie from a storytelling standpoint. So how do we like with Chapel go from there, and also Violator?
Okay, so what happens after is like, okay, like again, Cagliostro, he's teaching them like more like telling like, hey, this is like your, like you have a power meter, you have, and I could tell like by the way you lost that fight, you probably don't have much left right now. So you should refrain from like using your powers and instead like rely on the suit, which the chains don't use any power at all. Use the capes, which again also don't like use power at all. So like he can still glide and do all that. And then Al goes like, I can use my military training. And then he goes, gets Chapel, like maybe no, I think I kind of like the idea of like, hey, him and like Chapel and him ending up at the place where Al Simmons dies at and having like their fight there he tells him like all about like Win and or like how Win was in charge, and this kind of enrages him once again because Spawn is not anything but like a slave to his emotions. I'm not gonna lie to you, because he will always like teeter between wanting to do right by Wanda, screwing other people over, and murdering anybody who he has a grudge against. So now he's back on full grudge mode by taking out Chapel, perhaps giving him his skull face but not killing him, and just like leaving him a complete and total bloody mess, which is kind of like your first instinct is like, oh, maybe he's not gonna go through with the murder plot. And then you see him bomb rushing straight to Win's office, going through office after office after office. It's like, hey, Win, I've come to take you to hell.
Okay, so how do we so where would they have died at? Because we have to make it make sense where they returned to where they died. Because a part of me was thinking that but it also is kind of tough with this where it's like the entire time has been about the alley.
Then make it the alleys in. Make it the alleys in.
Perfect.
Because
so it's like that.
Because like where he died at, he was in like Botswana. He was like overseas, like Vietnam type of area.
So like with the allies, he gets beat in the second fight, and they're like, oh, well, obviously, Chapel can go to Win and be like, hey, we defeated the problem. We're moving in. You see like all the homeless being scattered, the definitely the poor and destitute getting pushed out of the alleys, and then like just like maybe a bigger corporate spot next to the alleys or whatever. And then that's where you can have like your rooftop fight, wherever you want to put the fight in, where he fights Chapel, does what he does, and then just like we don't even have to show him like beating the in-betweens. We can just like show him maybe carrying a dead body and then dropping it in front of Win before going after him.
Or it can be like Chapel's body. It will like not, but he's like not dead, but he looks dead because all you see is the skull face on there. Like, you forgot your handiwork, Win.
So
I've come to take you to hell. And that's when like Win tries his best to take out Simmons, but it's like a quick fight.
Yeah, it has to be quick.
Like it's like a quick maybe 1, maybe 2 minutes of just Simmons backhanding the mess out of him, airing out his entire grievances, all while Win is either laughing or just like gloating over like Simmons's death.
Dang. Because I was thinking he walks him down, but that's sick.
No, I told you, Win is an irredeemable son of a gun. Like Norman Osborn Green Goblin levels of irredeemable. So he has to be like, yeah, that's right. You did die, Simmons, and I did make that order to kill you and to pave my way for power. And like no matter what you've done today, it's not gonna make a difference because I'm just gonna keep on rising or something like that. And like again, Spawn just keep beating the mess out of him. Violator keeps telling like, gotta do it, gotta kill Win, kill him, kill him, kill him, kill him, and free yourself from your humanity. And that's when Spawn's like, no, and like backhands, and like maybe like either he backhands Clown by accident or even on purpose, like get out of my way, or even like he goes to attack Violator, and Violator just casually deflects, like casually just swats away whatever Spawn does, transforms, and then get into they tussle.
And then with that tussle, Spawn has already used most of his powers. So, and then we're also painting Violator for the first time in his full form. So he's like dogging Spawn.
Yeah, he's dogging Spawn, and until like he again remembers, like, because they are in a CIA facility. There's an armory somewhere. There's an armory somewhere. So Spawn gets sent into the armory, and he goes crazy, like mixing both his magic and his combat training to be able to best Violator. And in fact, we could recreate that moment where in the first appearance of Violator, he rips Spawn's heart out and like leaves Spawn for dead. Well, thinks Spawn is dead, and then Spawn just gets up with a giant hole in his chest and he says, "We ain't done here." Like, we ain't done here. And oh, no. Rips his heart out and leaves him like in the armory. Gets up, he's like, we ain't done here. And then you see him with all the guns and everything. Just,
that'll be dope. You want to lock that in?
Lock in the heart rip. Fatality. Rated R. So I'm thinking like, okay, after he's done like violating the violator, this like, well, in theory, like, you think it kills him, but all it does is just sends him back to hell, where he has to like recover for some time. And then Spawn, like, he just leaves. He takes into account all the words, like mentors and advice that he's gotten, leaves Wynn alive, but maybe like strings him up a bit, like leaves him for the cops or something with like evidence of his wrongdoing. Then goes and just gets back into the alleys, protecting the streets. Maybe even he's protecting the streets, but he's watching over Wanda and them.
That's what I was thinking. We have the brooding watching over Wanda and her family.
Yep.
And all like nighttime, play the music in the cave, just like, and we see his eyes glow.
Yep. Or even like have a this is gonna be sad. This is gonna be a sad moment. Okay, so he's at his grave, right? And he, like, as he's digging up his own grave, he gets his body. On his body is his wedding ring, and he gets that, and like he's wearing it for like the finale. At the end of the movie, like, maybe he like leaves it in like the baby girl, like the daughter Cyan's room, and then you see Wanda come in, and like she sees the ring, and he's like, "Baby, who gave you that?" It's like, the sad man. Like, sad man. And then she goes, "Al?" Then she looks out the window, and then it pans up to Spawn.
I love it.
Pans up to Spawn, being Spawn with the brooding eyes and all that, cape flowing in the wind. Oh,
nice. I like that. So if there's nothing with Malboja at all in the movie, like,
no. Like, as I said, the only time, like, all you see is like maybe Al Simmons in fire, like to simulate hell, and you're just hearing a voice, like the voice of Malboja, but you never actually see him.
Okay.
And then that should kind of help with the budget a little.
All right. So with that, let's get into our summary of it. I think we're locked in with everything. So we're going to put the placement of the movie early 2000s, post Blade, drop a video game for marketing purposes as well. This will be an origin story, but we're not starting with Al Simmons being pre-Spawn, so he's already going to be Spawn, remembering his past slowly throughout the movie. So with that, we start with the corruption in the alleys. Obviously, he's down bad. I've been brooding in the alleys. We see some men of corruption slowly playing out over time, but then it's like one of his friends in the alleys maybe gets his head busted or killed with that. So first fight absolutely destroys the men. We see the full attack power and magic and majesty of Spawn. With that, Chapel manages to escape from that first destruction fight, goes to Jason Wynn, says, "Hey, we need more help. Something is going on in the alleys." Again, throughout this entire time, it's playing out. Maybe this is the first appearance of the Violator in the movie, post the attack, kind of just pushing him on, saying, "Hey, you made a deal. You know these people, well, not you know these people, but these are bad men. Take them out. Use your powers like XYZ." With that. So then with that, over time, he kind of just gets more and more powerful, has interactions. Maybe we can do like a montage of him using his powers. Eventually goes to Wanda, because he gets depowered, uses his transformation abilities. Those ultimately fail. She sees him as a monster. And then with that, Terry also comes. He grips him up, is about to kill him, and then the girl, again, Cyan, daughter, walks in. For the first time, he sees how deformed he is, and it absolutely just terrorizes him. So it forces him to go back to the alleys, run away from the family. And then with that, he gets the second fight where Chapel absolutely, for lack of a better term, violates him. Absolutely kicks his butt, forcing the power and the suit to take him back to his grave, where he then remembers the deal with Malboja, remembers how he gets killed, who killed him, that being Chapel and Wynn. And then also he gets coached up by, what is his name again? Cagliostro. With that, who has been guiding him the entire time, trying to be that Jiminy Cricket angel on his shoulder. So with that, he also like ties into his military training with that. So then we ultimately lead into the final fight scene with Spawn presumably being gone. When Chapel, all of them move into the alleys with that, driving people out, where we get our final fight scene. Spawn beats Chapel, gives him the infamous skull face, for lack of a better term. Then fights Jason Wen, who is defiant in the face of him, even though he's defeated easily for the first time. Well, this is where Violator pushes him to kill Wen, and then for the first time, it gets revealed that Violator is a pure demon and not just a clown. And then with that, they fight. Spawn is in a weakened state, and then he pulls on the teachings of Cagliostro to use his not just magic, but also his military training. We get the famous panel of him getting his heart pulled out and then rising back up to beat the Violator. And then, as you mentioned, it kind of just wraps up. Wen's tied up, or like however he gets defeated, kind of goes to jail with that. And then we get the scene that you mentioned where he leaves the wedding ring in Cyan's room. And then we cut to the panel of him brooding after Wanda walks in. I like that. Cooking.
We cooking, sir. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, so y'all can just like let us know comments with that. That's what the deconstruction reconstruction is. Like I mentioned earlier, it's easy to take something apart. Star Wars fans do it all the time, but much harder to put something consistent and credible together. So yeah, so let us know what you think. With that, we are going to get into a speed run of the What's Hot. Like we mentioned, we are recording very close to our last recording, so not too much has dropped. Something definitely that we missed is going to drop, so just give us grace with that. But Meech, what you got?
Woo! All right, so as I said, 3-star versus 5-star. If you haven't watched it by that boy, it's on YouTube as well as TikTok. It originated on TikTok. Go watch the series. There's really not much else on that one. As mentioned, One Piece, the My Hero fandom going crazy right now because the final war arc. Everything we mentioned in the last episode applies now. Not really too much has come out really. Oh yeah, there's a new game that released called The Casting of Frank Stone. If you love Dead by Daylight and if you love Until Dawn, this is the game for you because it's made by both studios.
Interesting. All right. And for me, just one thing, the Venom trailer dropped last Thursday. If you're hearing this, so the Venom 3 trailer, I believe it might not be the final one, but that dropped last Thursday from when you're hearing this podcast. Hasn't come out on our end yet, so we haven't seen it since we're recording on a Tuesday. And then just next week, or the week that you're hearing this, Transformers 1 should have dropped, and we will be doing a movie review of that next week. So with that, we can get into our plugs and get up out of here.
All right, so for our Instagram, our ex formerly known as Twitter and Threads, we're Blerd City 22. Like, comment, subscribe, stay up to date on all notifications and our release schedule. We also have our Discord linked in our Instagram page. Come join this fine community of degeneracy, and you get to experience all the greatness that is Blerd Citydom. We also have our YouTube and Patreon under Blerd City Pod. If you want to donate some extra cheddar on the Patreon, you get access to very exclusive episodes not before seen and never will be seen, like the aforementioned Deconstruction Reconstructions of just pure garbage. All right, so we have our email address, blerdcity22@gmail.com. That's where you can leave your Geek Out Freakouts, your recommendations for the podcast, your very own, random fan theories and the like. If you have suggestions, AI criticism about us at all, and want us about hate mail, go ahead and send that to us too, because that's only going to end up in the spam mail, never to see the light of day. Finally, I am the Jedi born on Mustafar on the Instagram and TikTok, however long we got TikTok left, and that is me. What you got?
All right, for my individual author pages, we have my Instagram, Metri_dash, that is METRI_DASH. For my X/Twitter, that is at the Mad-16. And then if you're interested in my book, Phantom Reckoning, that is available on Amazon and Kindle, and then also Barnes & Noble. And then if you're interested in buying some merch that we're going to go through October, you can find that in the link below. So with that, any words of encouragement?
Well, here's one for me. If you guys are ever in a precarious situation where you have to make a deal with a certain entity, don't, because it's never going to end well for you. Them Faustian bargains are there for a reason. So if you haven't learned anything about Spawn or Ghost Rider, do not make a deal. In the case of, Howie Mandel's Deal or No Deal, no deal.
Yes, and I think we can tie that in from the podcast credo of no simping. So with that, it's not goodbye forever. It's just goodbye for now. And that's the Blerd City podcast.
See ya later.